The King Who Lost Himself. In the late Middle Ages, Europe shook under the weight of war, plague, and political chaos. But out of all the kings and tyrants who shaped history, only one ruler truly believed he was chosen by heaven, untouchable by mortals, and protected by divine purpose. A king who believed he was God-sent. This is the unbelievable but absolutely real story of King Charles VI of France, the monarch whose mind slowly shattered while an entire nation burned around him. A king who ruled while forgetting he was a king. A king who feared his own body would shatter into glass. A king who attacked his own knights in broad daylight. A king who walked the palace halls without recognizing his wife or children. A king who believed angels controlled his destiny and demons whispered in his ear. And yet, his decisions shaped France. His madness reshaped Europe. And his delusions triggered one of the bloodiest political collapses in medieval history. This is the untold, terrifying, and profoundly tragic journey of the king who believed he was God-sent. The Prodigy King. In 1380, a young boy stepped onto the throne of France. His name was Charles, born into the powerful Valois dynasty. He was only 11 years old, but the nation expected miracles from him. Why? Because France was collapsing. The 100 Years' War raged against England. The countryside was torn by rebels. The treasury was empty. The nobles were restless. And yet, the moment Charles took the throne, chroniclers wrote something strange. They described the boy as gentle as an angel, warm as spring, touched by heaven itself. Even the royal astrologers whispered that the child was blessed, perhaps even destined. France desperately needed hope. Charles became that hope. For the first few years, regents ruled in his name. But when Charles turned 20, everything changed. He dismissed every advisor. He took control. And for a short time, he became one of the greatest kings France ever had. He passed fair laws, crushed corruption, eased taxes, and brought peace to villages that had lived in fear for decades. Some said he ruled with a divine calm. But behind that calm, something terrible was brewing. Something no one could see. Something that would destroy him, and with him, destroy France. The Breaking of a King. In the summer of 1392, King Charles VI led a military expedition to punish a rebellious noble. The day was suffocatingly hot. The king rode ahead, sweating under heavy armor. His knights chatted behind him. Suddenly, a man ran into the road screaming, "Turn back! You are betrayed!" The guards seized him. The king's heart began to pound. He became pale. Moments later, a knight accidentally dropped his lance. It clanged loudly against the metal armor of another soldier. That sound triggered something inside Charles. The king's eyes went wide, and then he snapped. He pulled out his sword. He charged at his own men, screaming, "Treason! Treason! You serve darkness!" His knights were stunned. They begged him to stop. But the king kept attacking, blind with terror. By the time they managed to restrain him, 4 of his loyal knights were dead, dozens wounded. The king lay shaking, sweating, and muttering things no one understood. This was the beginning of a madness that would haunt him for the rest of his life, and haunt France for decades. The madness takes hold. Charles recovered physically, but mentally, he never came back. At first, the episodes came and went. Some days he was perfectly normal, intelligent, calm, even charming. Other days,
He didn't recognize his wife. He shouted that his enemies were disguised as servants. He said demons slept under his throne. He claimed angels whispered his decisions to him in dreams. And then came the strangest delusion of all. Charles became convinced that his entire body was made of glass. Yes, real history. This actually happened. He ordered steel rods sewn into his clothing to hold him together. He refused to let anyone touch him. He stopped moving certain ways, terrified he would shatter. Court physicians wrote in their journals, "The king trembles at the slightest sound, believing the world conspires to break him like fragile crystal." But the madness didn't stop there. One winter, Charles disappeared. They found him wandering the palace gardens, barefoot, refusing to come inside. He screamed that he was no longer the king, that he was a simple, God-sent messenger, chosen for a sacred mission. That phrase spread across Europe. The king who believed he was God-sent. A ruler who forgot his own name. A monarch who forgot he had power. A man who believed heaven had replaced his identity with something divine and terrifying. A kingdom without a king. Because Charles was mentally gone for months at a time, the government collapsed. Who would rule? The nobles fought over control like vultures over a dying corpse. Two factions formed. The Armagnacs, led by Charles' brother-in-law. They claimed they were the true protectors of France. The Burgundians, led by Charles' cousin, the Duke of Burgundy. He claimed Charles wanted him to rule. Both sides fought, in Charles' name. Both sides slaughtered in the name of a king who could not speak for himself. France fell into civil war. Whole cities burned. Villages starved. Brothers killed brothers. The people said, "France has two kings and no king. A mad king is worse than no king at all." In the middle of this chaos, Charles' madness worsened. Some weeks he believed he was divinely chosen to bring peace. Other weeks he believed heaven had abandoned him. Some days he asked for forgiveness from God. Other days he shouted that he was God. One servant wrote, "The king's mind is a battlefield between heaven and hell, and we are trapped within his war." Betrayal of a nation. The tragedy reached its peak in 1415. England invaded. Their young king, Henry V, was brilliant, ruthless, and determined. France should have fought united. Instead, the French fought each other. Armagnacs versus Burgundians. Burgundians versus Armagnacs. Meanwhile, Henry V cut through France like a blade through butter. He slaughtered the French at Agincourt. He marched into Normandy. He took city after city. And then, the unthinkable happened. Charles' own queen, Queen Isabeau, decided that her husband was no longer fit to rule. She made a deal with England. Henry V would marry Charles' daughter and become the next king of France. Charles VI, still alive, was removed from his own succession. All of France gasped in horror. The king who believed he was God-sent was abandoned by his own family. He didn't understand what had happened. Some days he asked, "Where is my kingdom? Where is my crown? Have angels taken it back?" He had no idea his throne had been given away. His madness had finally given France something worse than chaos, a foreign king. The final break. The last years of Charles' life were heartbreaking. He wandered the palace halls mumbling prayers. He tried to command armies that no longer existed. He forgot most of his children. He sat on the throne asking the empty air for divine instruction. Many nights he screamed that demons were chewing on his bones. He became skeletal, a ghost wearing a crown.
On October 21, 1422, after decades of mental torture, King Charles VI died. Not as a hero, not as a monster, not even as a king. He died as a broken man, a tragic reminder of what happens when a ruler loses himself and a nation loses its leader. France was in ruins. Civil war raged. England claimed the throne. Millions suffered because one man's mind had shattered beyond repair. But history remembers him for something else too. A king who truly believed. He was chosen. He was divine. He was God-sent. Whether that was a gift or a curse depends on how you tell the story. But one thing is certain. His madness changed Europe forever. The legacy of a broken crown. Today, historians study Charles VI not as a legend, but as one of the earliest recorded cases of severe mental illness in a European monarch. His condition included psychosis, delusional identity, schizophrenia-like symptoms, depersonalization, hallucinations, paranoid episodes. But at the time, no one understood mental illness. No one understood the mind. No one understood madness. To them, he was a king touched by heaven, or a king cursed by hell, or a king broken by destiny. But above all, he remains the most tragic ruler of the Middle Ages, the king who believed he was God-sent.